that advancing on the scale or is trying?
Steve, we can't hear you.
Oh, Steve, you have to use the mic.
Yes. Sorry, excuse me, it got way into the middle. Can you put it at the first slide?
I will get your ear right now.
Okay, hold on one second. Thank you very much, Molly, for that introduction. It's really good to see all of you. This is the first time. Thank you. Got it. This is the first of the history pubs for this year. I really appreciate Molly for setting them up. It is great to be just back in front of an audience who down here at Cottage Grove. I love the accent fiddle. I so much appreciate giving us this. Yay, thanks guys. And tonight I have a kind of a different take on one of the. I passed out. Everybody should have gotten one of a handout. It's 8.5 by 11. It says the 23 at last count mysteries in the story of Opal Whiteley. And also there is a Opal tour brochure in there that was designed by this redheaded lady over here, Alice Christensen, former president of our Historical Society. And she designed the Opal tour. It is really a good one. And also finally, I have been with the Asian Celebration for almost 20 years doing the Heritage Exhibit. And people around there, they know me much better for stories of Asian immigrants coming to Western Oregon than they do Opal Whiteley. But this is my first love, Opal Whiteley. And are we going to do the trivia questions or just skip them? Okay, because I put together a few trivia questions, but we used to write those out. Okay, keep in mind, here are going to be the trivia questions that I answer during the talk. But first I want to say this is kind of a kickoff to our 2021 open, hopefully carefully open, Summer of History and Fun. And look at the stuff we have coming up. July 17th and 18th is Bohemia Mining Days. We've got the Buster Keaton Day with the unveiling of the new mural that Johnny Houston is working on down there. Singing Creek Educational Center has a Grandparents' Day, September 12th. And that is really not to be missed if you have grandkids, because everybody gets dressed up in old-fashioned clothes, and it's own Grandparents' Day. And of course, Western Oregon Exposition in its 89th continuous year. And all the museums are open too, and also they would love to have you as a volunteer. Now, where did Molly go? I wanted to say, one really drag is that we're going to be losing Molly. Molly? Surprise. Yeah, this is a... Molly, come up here for a second, because I really want to thank Molly for keeping these history pubs alive and going. These wouldn't be happening without your energy, your work, and your predecessor, Jared Sedgwick, who started them, and we really appreciate it. So we also have something for you. I'm not the best rapper, but that is a piece, a rock Yes, so you can carry Cottage Grove with you, a rock. But actually, that's a piece of real gold ore, and if you see it in the sun, you can see the gold in it. And it's from the Bohemia Gold Miners Museum and the Bohemia Mine Owners Association. So they really appreciate that. Yeah, sadly, Molly is leaving us to go to that little South Sea island, Maui. Yeah. And so, but we're going to really miss you, and we hope you come back again. In fact, I also have for you a whole handful of Cottage Grove tourism brochures. Spread them out around Maui. Come back with your family. Cottage Grove would be a great place for someone from Maui to visit. We have all the things that they don't have in Maui. It'd be a lot of fun. And thank you again, all your work. And this is, if you want, the program she's worked under is called RARE, the Resource Assistance for Rural Environments, and it's part of her graduate studies. So thank you so much. First thing I'll start with is a lot of the things I'm going to cover in here are in the online book, the PDF I wrote called Opal Whiteley's Fairyland Diaries. I've uncovered about 180 unpublished diary entries, dated them all. I've got one version that has no notes. Another version, 180 diary entries. I wrote 300 research notes on those 180. So you can find that at opalnet.org or my website, storiesbysteve.com. Now, this talk is about, I'm going to go over like the 23, at last count, mysteries in the story of Opal Whiteley. And I'm going to focus on the biggest mystery of when she wrote her diary, and hopefully have whole new information for you. So, I don't know, you can't, I've got to learn to use bigger fonts, but that's why I passed out a copy of these 23 mysteries in her diary. In all these different areas, whether she was a Whiteley or not, where she got the knowledge she had from a young age, did she ever really deliberately lie? And what about the fairies? Where did she really learn about fairies? And yeah, if you've got a question, go ahead and write it down, because I've left lots of time for questions in this talk. First, I'm looking around. Everybody here is familiar with Opal. I'm glad, because I don't have to go back and do the introduction to Opal Whiteley part. I can get right in depth to a mystery. But why still read her? This is important. After, she's still controversial. I say she's the last literary mystery of the 20th century. And I still think that's true. It's been translated, her diary's been translated to German, French, Italian, Russian, Chinese, and I'm pretty sure Spanish now. And it's still a really good book. And it shows this uplifting view of the world from a child's eyes. And also Opal Whiteley's life. It shows both the magic of faith and believing, but it's also kind of the dark side of positive thinking taken to a real extreme in her case. But it worked for her. Now, the mystery I'm going to focus on tonight is, when was Opal Whiteley's diary written? There's never been an explanation of her faking it outside of Cottage Grove. Nobody's ever come up with a good, workable explanation of her faking it. For instance, by October 30th, 1919, the diary was not in Boston, and Ellery Sedgwick said he got the diary. They started compiling it. Elbert Bede, the Cottage Grove newspaperman, accused her of of putting it together in Los Angeles before she went to Boston. But that doesn't work for a couple of reasons. One is that it's blamed, this handwriting inside of books that the Prince of D'Orleans wrote. There's handwriting in the margin, and Albert Bean thought it was Opal's. It actually is not Opal's. It's provably not Opal's, both by handwriting analysis and also the director of the Los Angeles Public Library got fired from his job. One of the reasons was he went around reading books and he corrected information in the margins. Hundreds, thousands of books had it. She had all this butcher paper and all this childish writing, but she was teaching 19 children of Hollywood movie stars and directors at the time. So any teacher of children has got a bunch of kids' papers and stuff around them. And everything else everything in her diary fits. It's all correct as terms of when somebody was born, when somebody died, where something is. But I like this slide about the fairies telling me when Opal Whiteley's childhood diary was written. If you look at the number of fairies in the childhood diary, the word fairy or fairy only appears 29 times in 75,000 words. Now, in the fairyland around us, it's 411 times in 60,000 words. That is a big difference, and to literary detectives that means something, because we know exactly when she wrote the fairyland around us. And if you have this kind of imbalance in fairies or use of one thing, it shows they're written at different times. And what's the reason? I think it's because Peter Pan was virtually unknown in 1905 when Opal's writing her diary. By the time she publishes The Fairyland Around Us, Peter Pan is like the first worldwide children's sensation, like Harry Potter. I look around, all of us as kids remember the Peter Pan adventures. And I think that's the difference in the fairies. She actually learned about fairies and wee folk, not from an angel mother or somebody, but from her grandmother. Her great-grandmother had been born and raised on a plantation in the South, and Opal says that her as she phrases it, Negro mammy, who took care of her, taught her also about the wee folk of the fields and the forest. Here's another good reason why Opal Whiteley's diary is authentic. I just put this slide together. I love it. In the book, she says that she's out there at the railroad track where the Round River Trail headquarters is right now. And she says that she's walking around the Dinky engine. And I knew, because I'd done railroad construction right off, what kind of engine that was. And they were small little tugboat, powerful engines that just mostly worked around the railroad yards, moving things around. But the famous story, the little engine that could with that, I think I can, that wasn't published till like 1920 or so, that comes from the origin of the dinky. And the way we use the word dinky today comes from this engine. The word, it's originally Scottish from the late 1800s, but it means more like dainty. It doesn't really mean have the same kind of dainty and dinky in the way we think of it today. And I'm going to go through some of these other slides kind of quicker. Here's some fragments of Opal's diary that we have. And, Katie Vaughn is not here, but I always thank her for putting on the 100th anniversary birthday party for the Dorena Post Office, 1999. This woman brought a book of Oregon history and just walked up to me and gave it to me and told me to get it to the right historical group. I flipped it open, and inside of it was this little piece of paper folded up, and inside that little piece of paper was this. This is 1/4 of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that shows her diary was torn up at some point Up here it says Dear Composition. She always started diary entries off saying Dear Composition because she wrote in composition notebooks. And this is the top left and the inside top right. And it's from her time in Dorina. I put it at the U of O. Now, one of the things that kind of makes Opal's diary authentic, and I know you can't see this, I've got to redo this slide, but all through there, you know, the borning days she has and the going away days, the birthdays and the death days. She's getting those out of an almanac. We all remember almanacs if we're of a certain age that were used in school. She says in the diary that that's one of the 3 books that they have at home, an almanac, and every school. So the dates that she has in there, you can date the diary entries when she says, like, today is the going away day of George Handel. And you look that up and you find out Handel died this day. It makes it, the U of O, we did that, we found that at the U of O. And here she is, age 9, in the Walden School. This picture is March 27th, 1907. Whoops. And yeah, there's about age 9.
Sorry about that.
Here she is there. I can't see him, but that's Mike Mosby, a very well-known person. And if we went, I wish a few years ago that I'd asked some older people to identify kids in the classroom. But this is you see this little smudge on the wall there. Her teacher, she looks pretty exhausted. You know, that's a one-room schoolhouse, and I think she's teaching 6 or 8 grades. It's a lot of kids, and in those one-room schoolhouses, big kids taught little ones. Now, if you look here, that smudge on the chalkboard turns out to be a calendar, and the date is March 27th, and March 27th on a Wednesday. That means my picture was taken on March 27th, 1907. And this is the grandparents' house out at Mosby Creek Road in Lang Road. And she didn't live in this house, but this is this is on the property that she lived in and is a house exactly like she lived in. But this might have been Elsie and her young husband's. This is the lane. The lane's still there today. I treasure this picture. It was given to me by John Wilson, a real mentor to me. This is a family reunion, McKibbins and Pattons on Mosby Creek. And without John Wilson, we would have never had any kind of picture of Sadie McKibbin. It's the only known picture. And her bun, her hair is up in a bun. And Opal's diary in July, and this picture was taken in July, describes her helping Sadie McKibbin put up her hair in a bun. The man with gray neckties who's kind of mice, real name George Miller. He wore gray neckties all of his life. This is a picture of the 20s. This is a picture of him when Opal Whiteley did. And this is the man that I think is the real model for Angel Father. This is her Uncle Henry Pearson. He was a gold miner around here. He made one of the biggest gold mining strikes in Bohemia's history that really kicked it off. And I've written a PDF. I've got it printed out here. There's a PDF on my website that you can go to and read. It's about 40 pages long with all the documentation of how important he was and why I think he's such a ringer for Angel Father. Now that's the Prince Henri d'Orleans, the man Opal later was to say was her Angel Father. But let me show you the similarities between Henry D. Pearson and Henry d'Orleans. They both have the same first name, middle initial. They both traveled to far lands. Pearson was a miner who did mining down in South America, Alaska. He strongly encouraged her education. Both of them are said to have taught her poetry. Both of them are sought to have taught her geology, spirituality, singing, and they both have blue eyes. And Henry David Pearson was named, most probably, he was born in the same year that Henry David Thoreau died. So that probably tells you his family had abolitionist sympathies. And his nickname for Opal, it's in fairyland around us, was Little Oriole or Little Oriole, like the bird. She had a cousin who was named Merle for blackbird. So she was Oriole. Thing is, that's an interesting ear rhyme for Orleans. So all these interesting things. And Uncle Henry here, who was Opal's by far his favorite uncle, he died without disclosing the location of a gold mine. He is supposed to know the location of one of those legendary gold mines up in Bohemia that's lost. And let me tell you, that really would change your view of your uncle. Growing up thinking that he was going to leave money for your education, finding out he was virtually bankrupt when he died, and if he had a lost gold mine, he didn't reveal it. Okay, now we're going to get into the meat of some new material here with this is the first printing of Opal's diary, March 1920. We were going to have a great celebration in March 2020. The city declared it Opal Whiteley Day, and then of course the shutdown happens. But this is the first 4 chapters of Opal Whiteley's diary in the Atlantic Monthly, and it was serialized. Now the point is the wording, the language, and the French changed dramatically between the first 4 chapters and the rest of them. It's another view of that's what the page looked like. Now, Peter Paul Rubin's going to school. He's in the last chapter in the March 1920 edition. Now, let's look at when the French comes into Opal Whiteley's diary. The first 4 chapters in 1920, then in the March edition, have much less French. There's no angel father, no angel mother, no Catholic chants. She uses simple French words, what Ben Hoff call farm French, like cow, pig, goat. Riviere for river is like that, or it's an easy misspelling. Garland, that's another simple word, girls and farm girls would have known. Chapter 2 has no French whatsoever. Chapter 3 has that one line, Comme Petit Francois. Now, Opal had a cousin whose middle name was Francis, and she was out there quite frequently. So I kind of think the wind is saying that. Chapter 4 has no French whatsoever. But then chapter 5 comes out in the April edition of the book. And in chapter 5, then we have Angel Father. Then we have acrostics. Then we have lots of French. Here we have in chapter 5 that incident where the school teacher had a confrontation, and Opal gives her the spelling of all these animals in French and goes back and forth. And also a neat thing, an interesting thing in that chapter, she is kept in at recess for arguing with the teacher, over the French words. And she wants to go outside, but the big children, they're playing this game, Black Man. And she doesn't want to do that. What she wants to do is go to the Riviera. So I spent a lot of time learning what Black Man was, and I've had a hunch. So yeah, it was a racist game where it's kind of a game of tag, except when you caught the black man, you could mock lynch him. And it was like, tag, you're in. You're the black man who runs around. Okay, chapter 5 begins the April 1920 Atlantic Monthly. It's also the very first mention of Elsie and her young husband, and much more. The boarding and going away days really get started in this chapter. So Elsie is is actually Leela Garut. I call this the aristocrats next door, but it's Elsie and her young husband, Leela Electric Garut, and this is his birth name. It's on his birth certificate, Sir Walter Scott. Opal says he's got a pompadour. There he is with his pompadour. And the neat thing about Leela Garut is that she's descended from French aristocracy. So where does Opal get the remote idea, even from the get-go, that she's related to French aristocracy? She gets it from her Aunt Leela, who lives next door to her, I think. So I think she's the source of the farm French in the diary. The animals, creek, just the simple words that a farm family would probably remember of French ancestry. Now, to show you her importance, even though she doesn't come in until chapter 5, she's mentioned 46 times in the diary, more than anyone else except the mama, Elizabeth Whiteley. Yes, so Elsie is important. Elsie's great-grandfather, who is he? And I'm asked, as I'm digging this stuff up a few years ago, I'm asking myself, this is easy to find out. Why wasn't this known years ago? Lots of people knew this. Because the Garuts were very proud that they have a great-grandfather who came here who was a cousin of the King of France. And he was childhood friends with General Lafayette and fought in the Revolutionary War. And there's a Wikipedia page about Michael Antoine Garut. And our Garuts here are directly descended from him. And Leela Garut is his great-great-granddaughter. They have a coat of arms. He was a privateer in the Revolutionary War. And that puts you in a privateer is a person who owned the ship. They hadn't like enlisted, but they were using their own ship on behalf of the cause. Now here is a wonderful picture of Merle Scott. We call it Merle today. Daughter of Leela Garut and Sir Walter Scott. She's born on a cold February night, 1905, just like Opal's diary said. And Opal says in the diary that she picked out the name from a book Angel Father gave her, but the name. And she picked out the name Merle, which is French for blackbird. Now, Leela Garut's son confirmed to me that his mother really did pick out his sister's name. Oh no, he really was Merle's son. Merle's son told me that she really was named by Opal, which is kind of a neat confirmation. And you can see the similarity. Now I've shown some of these papers. I'm going to jump ahead to Boston, because that's how the simple farm French gets into the diary. The things that, I think it's just simple. There's a woman living right next to her that Opal knows real well, who doesn't speak French, but knows a few French words from her family, who is directly descended from European aristocracy. And I don't know about you, but when I was a little boy, my aunt by marriage, I didn't get that difference between an aunt by marriage and an aunt by blood. I didn't get that at all. So my aunt by marriage was just as real. Now here is what I call the Francois papers. These were written after her diary was published. They're written in third person using the name Francois, but it's clearly Opal's writing. And it gives a real in-depth history of what happened to her in Boston. And I think this is the most interesting part of this talk, because there's a villain in Boston that really hasn't been exposed before, or just not as well as other people. But in Thanksgiving 1919, she's really happy. She's met Lord Grey Fowley. He is the head of the League of Nations, the forerunner of the United Nations. He's in Boston to try to save it because the League of Nations collapsed. He was in Boston trying to save it. He met Opal and formed a lifelong friendship with her, always believed there was something to her story. Now, then at Christmas time, she's happy at Thanksgiving, they're working like crazy on the diary, and then at Christmas time, something really nasty happens. I call it the Blue Bloods slap Opal. Now, Boston and the intelligentsia, Opal was around, were what you call the Blue Bloods, at the highest level of American intelligentsia and aristocracy that you can get. The Boston, Harvard, Ivy League. Opal is being treated great until then. But then these holiday parties come up. And these parties are for young girls to meet young boys and to make marriages. They won't allow her to attend those parties because they say it's because you're illegitimate. And I think there's very few ways you could have slapped Opal Whiteley hard. You know, it means that all of her hard work, you know, whether she was an orphan or not, but all of her, no matter how hard she worked, no matter how many lectures she gave, how many prayers she prayed, or books, she was always going to be illegitimate with these people. And I wonder if that's where the determination to be Francois was really born. Because the Opal Whiteley that I've become familiar with wouldn't back down. She would find a way to keep fighting on. So if she's going to be illegitimate, she's going to be somebody important, illegitimate child. Now, right after the first edition, the first Atlantic Monthly, March magazine comes out, a woman enters the picture, and her name is Elise Ravenel Duane. She comes in right after the first part of the diary's been published. She becomes what is called a really great friend to Ellery Sedgwick. And very quickly, she gets Ellery Sedgwick to have her be the only person who was allowed access to Opal. Ellery Sedgwick in the Atlantic Monthly could always say, we watched Opal every minute in the creation of the diary. No way she could have falsified anything. It's all just like we say. Except this woman has come on the picture. And she is the only person watching Opal or with access with Opal with the diary. And here's her picture. She is high American aristocracy. This is her portrait. Elise is her middle name. Ravenel Duane. This is the coat of arms for her family. Her family's French aristocracy too. And she really became enamored of Opal. And after she comes in, the French words and places and sayings multiply. I wish you could see this. I'm going to do it better next time. But let me tell you briefly who Elise Ravenel Duane was. She becomes Ellery Sedgwick's confidant. She spots the acrostics. She identifies Orleans family. Now, she had lived in France and claimed to know the places where Opal Whiteley lived. Here's her husband, Dr. William Duane, a Harvard physicist, descendant of Benjamin Franklin. Hey, he studied with Madame Curie in Paris, 1907. And so, yes, the woman did know France. Mrs. Duane did know France very well. The physics building at the University of Colorado is named for Dr. Duane. This is his Wikipedia page. So you see, and people in Cottage Grove always wondered if people in Boston were manipulating Opal for some strange reason. I always thought, it's ridiculous. Yeah, no. Now, here's a 1920 letter. Ellery Sedgwick, publisher of the Atlantic Monthly, wrote about Mrs. Duane to a lawyer. And it's so clear that he really, really, really trusts her. And apparently, I think he goes to his grave completely trusting her because he wrote an article, a book, where he talked about this and mentioned her briefly. And he also said that he never understood why Opal turned on him. and that he had been so kind to her, so consistently kind. He never was able to understand why Opal seemed to turn on him. Mrs. Dwayne is the reason. And she winds up betraying both Ellery Sedgwick and Opal Whiteley. This is the coolest mystery. Now, this is Opal's handwriting. Elise Dwayne convinces Opal that the Atlantic Monthly owes her money and has proof of her identity. Sedgwick wrote about this in that letter I showed you. So that they're not, and that they've sold the movie rights to her diary, that the Atlantic Monthly has betrayed them. And she tells Opal that Ellery Sedgwick won't be in his office this weekend, and that they should go and get a copy of the contracts and the checks. So they go there on the weekend. They don't exactly break in. There was some clerk there who let them in, but then they went off through Ellery Sedgwick's desk and everything, looking for the contracts and these checks that allegedly showed that she was owed a lot more money, or for proof of her identity, all because Mrs. Dwayne plants those ideas in her head. And I wonder what the story of Opal would look like if it weren't for Elise Dwayne. And by the way, Elsie in the diary is probably named for Elise because Elsie is the Scottish version of Elise, the French version of the same girl's name. And this is Catherine Beck's book. It's the same thing as she found the same handwritten papers of Opal's that I did. And this is where she writes about them going and breaking into the office. I don't think Ellery Sedgwick ever knew about that. He knew that Opal was real suspicious, and he knows what she's suspicious of, but he just doesn't. What reason does she have? He never figures out that Mrs. Dwayne is backstabbing. Now, why on earth does this woman backstab Ellery Sedgwick and Opal Whiteley? She's real high American aristocracy. Husband's a physics professor at Harvard. She's descended from a very proud family of French immigrants down in the Carolinas. And what could her motives be? Oh, I found one motive that may be there. Maybe it was she wanted to embarrass the French royal family, and maybe she wanted to use Opal to embarrass the Catholic Church. Because something not many people know, or there's a little test on your knowledge of religious history. Who knows who the Huguenots were? Yeah. If you know your church history, Huguenots are a big deal in France. These were the Protestants that the Catholic Church, over a period of like a couple of hundred years more, they had numerous purges of the Huguenots, and France finally formally apologized in 1985. But they figure at least 3 million people were killed in these religious wars, some of the worst religious wars. And guess what? Elise Ravenel, the Ravenels are very high aristocracy from that Huguenot line. So yes, that is an interesting motive. If she could do something to embarrass the French royal family, and yeah, would that be a motive that would attract a Huguenot? Yes. And they don't see the slide in here, but yeah, the family's still very interested in their Huguenot ancestry. One of her granddaughter, it's named after her, married into the DuPont family, and she was elected governor of Maryland. And her Wikipedia page talks about she redid the governor's mansion, decorating it as in French decor. They still keep up with it. Is Molly going to try to interrupt me?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay, good.
And then I'll come up with a trivia. I'll explain the trivia.
I was just going to throw out, there was, I haven't found this webpage, in a good while, but I talked to them. There was one family of Bourbons directly descended from the Rubens who accepted Opal Whiteley as an illegitimate daughter of Prince Henri d'Orleans. And the fellow told, there she is on their webpage. The man told me he thought she looked just like his aunt. And the more I learned about Prince Henri d'Orleans, the more I learned why aristocrats in Europe were quick to believe Opal's story of being his child. I mean, think of it, if he was gay or celibate, no chance. But let's suppose he had a reputation for running around and sleeping with lots of different women. The odds of a child of Henri d'Orleans out there increase astronomically. How Opal could have ever known this. She's buried in London's aristocratic Highgate Cemetery under both of those names. This is one of the last pictures of her in the asylum. And by the way, the next part of this, I'll pause for questions after this, but the next part of the slideshow would go into, was she crazy or did she have, clearly she had something wrong with her, but what was it? I can make a strong case. I think it was autism, Asperger's. She had just about all the signs, and back in her day, child geniuses were kind of rare, but now if you go online and look for child geniuses like kids in the 3rd grade who are writing novels, yeah, you'll find them out there. Hey, she's some sort of princess. She's got, how many college dropouts have their statue at the entrance of 2 libraries? We have it on our Cottage Grove Library, and this is a lovely garden right at the Knight Library at the U of O. Ella Tyson is the sculptor, and she did both of these, and we're really indebted to her work because it's a beautiful statue. I'm going to conclude here with a pitch. Again, most of this research I'm talking about is buried inside this book I call the Fairyland Diaries. You can print it out, although it's better read online because there's 111 pages, and I think 100 of them have pictures on them. So your printer's going to be working overtime to print that out. But it's got one version with 300 research notes for 180 diary entries, and the other version is clean, no research notes, and it's organized by month. The diary entries, and I have dates, and there's like 35 new pets. There's some great news stories about they have to quit using the Bible for naming their pets because they've run out of names in the Bible. And they found some other book that was full of European people. Now, it really wouldn't be fair and balanced, as they say. I think Opal Whiteley wrote the vast majority of the diary in childhood, like she said, and I think it was added to in Boston. And you're probably the first crowd tonight to hear, this is the person who may have worked with Opal Whiteley to add French in there, because when at least Ravenel Duane enters the picture, the amount of French just explodes, and it becomes more complex French. It's places, it's people. It's not just cow, pig, duck, like simple farm French. This is from the Fairyland Around Us, and in the Fairyland Diaries, and she's remembering when she's age 3. Now, this diary entry, here she says, I was 3 then and had my daily lunch counter for the birds on the windowsill. And since she was only 3, it was rather trying because she couldn't go out in the snow and play with these chickadees. She loved feeding the chickadees. And you look it up, and first of all, it doesn't sound like a child in Europe. And chickadees at that time weren't in Europe, I don't think. Here's another place in the Fairyland Around Us, Pandora the Pet Chipmunk. And here she talks about being 3 years old. Look at the way read the way she phrases. Long time ago, before that birthday that made me 4 years old. Before that birthday that made me 4 years old. What a way to say when I was 3. So, Pandora the pet chipmunk. The mother and her aunt's got a guest coming. They have a nut salad out on the table. Pandora jumps onto the table, grabs the nut salad, and runs out. And Opal's been trying to train her up in the way that she should go, but she can't make her do it. And she concludes with, "That's a lot like how Mama feels about me." It's a really cute paragraph. And finally, there's so many people, I won't call all their names in through, but all these people that have helped me over the years. The University of Oregon, that the Center for Advanced Technology and Education, they got closed, they got advanced enough. John Wilson of Cottage Grove, my first historical mentor. The Marcola photographer, Curtis Irish. I wouldn't have been with the Asian Celebration without him. He dug up the original pictures and newspaper stories about Asians in the Mohawk Valley. And we went on and my dear wife, this is from when she worked at the KND, the radio station, and she was Karen Hamilton on the work. Oh man, I certainly, all my talks are kind of dedicated to you guys. That's it. And finally, come to the Asian Celebration, July 31st, free admission. It's at Alton Baker Park. It's going to be fun. That's a picture of my exhibit when it was inside the Lane Event Center. But free admission, and yeah. So thank y'all all so very much. And I really appreciate that. Anybody got questions of anything I had up here, or any of the 23 at last count mysteries, including why in the hell I keep doing this? Oh, come on, somebody press that quick.
I just think it's great that you keep telling Opal's story and that you find new information.
Yeah, and Deborah, your name's up there. Deborah Monson up here, who's done some really good research for me. And there is Opal's story. It's the most complicated mystery you can imagine. And several times I thought I caught her in a lie, a significant lie. Like to me, the 3-year-old, the Pandora, the chipmunk, and the chickadees, it's not a real significant lie. And I several times thought, okay, got her. Whoops, not her at all. Like I was mentioning the books that supposedly Opal had written the books written by the Prince Henri d'Orleans in the Los Angeles Public Library that supposedly Opal had written in. And the internet was new. Late one night, as a lark, I decided to see if the Los Angeles Public Library was open, was online. It was. I did a search for these books that were alleged that were supposed to be there. They were there. So next morning, I called the Rare Books Library, Los Angeles Public Library, and I asked them could you just first of all get out the books and see if there's any writing in the margin? And so he called me back a little while later. He says, yes, there's writing in a lot of the margins. And my heart just crushed. Well, I got him to send me Xerox pages. First thing I found was no way was it Opal's handwriting. Second, some of them were in a book about the water buffalo in Southeast Asia. And the writer is correcting the author. And then a little while later, this book comes out, Charles Fletcher Loomis, who was an academic lecturer who preyed on Opal, but he was fired from the LA library because of his habit of correcting books. Imagine if the library, classical library, was reading the books and writing corrections in the margins. So, but for like 100 years, it's been that Opal Opal read about the French prince long before she ever was in Boston. Not true at all. Doesn't come up until Boston. So it's the strangest mystery. And it's a lot of fun. And I appreciate you all. I've met so many really nice people. So, yeah, thank you all again. Yeah, so much. And Molly, thanks again for all your work. You know, we're not done. Good. We're not done. Quite done. Probably good. You want me to put the trivia page in?
Yeah, if you want to. Okay, so now we're going to do trivia, and there are a couple pieces of paper on your tables with a pen. Sorry, I don't have that many pens, so there's one pen. You have to share the pen. And we're going to go through the questions, and you have to just, sorry? You just have to write your answers on the paper, and then we'll go over the answers later, and you have to do this honestly.
Do you mean these papers?
Yes, those papers. Yes. And we have 3 prizes. They're all donated by the Axe and Fiddle, and so we'll go over the answers after we go over the questions. Okay.
Oh, good. That's hard to go. That's more complicated than figuring out a story. You figure, okay. Okay, this. Do y'all all have? Can y'all all read these, or would you like me to read them aloud? Like,
Yeah, let's go. Let's read one by one.
okay. Where did Opal get her borning and going away days from? That's the first one. And what did Michael Garut do in the Revolutionary War?
There you go, Bert. And then give like a minute or two.
Oh.
And then there's
And what was the origin of the word dinky? This one's kind of a curveball. There's 2 possibilities. What was Elsie's real name, and what does Merle mean? What was Elise Ravenel Duane's religion of birth? Getting close. Who published the Atlantic Month? Who was the publisher of the Atlantic Month? And why couldn't poor Opal go to the holiday parties? Whoops. How do the fairies tell Steve she wrote her diary in childhood? How do the fairies tell Steve she wrote her diary in childhood? And the one before that, why couldn't Opal go to the Boston parties for young people? Now, did I read them well? Did everybody get those? Well enough? Okay, so I don't know how long we're supposed to wait. Molly, how long do we wait?
I mean, how people will
Okay, how are people doing on the questions? Need more time? She's raising her hand.
Is everyone ready? Do we need more time answering the questions? We're good? Good at questions, good at answers? Okay. Great, I think we can go over the questions and the answers. Steve, I made you. Those are hard questions.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so the first question was, where did Opal get her boarding and going away days from?
I know.
What's
Yes.
the answer?
Right. An almanac. In her book, she says, in her diary, she says that they've got 3 books in their home: an almanac, a cookbook, and a doctoring book. And you know, when we were kids, if, you know, a lot of y'all remember almanacs were everywhere, miniature encyclopedias, and yeah, when Opal's not, and they really gave, Opal loved getting names and factoids out of them. And let's see, okay, what did Michael Carruth do in the Revolutionary War? Privateer. Right, privateer. Now, how do we judge this?
Oh, they have to do it themselves. Yeah. You guys have to edit or mark them yourselves, but to mark it honestly. I'm not gonna check.
Okay.
Number 3.
Number 3, okay, what is the origin of the word dinky? And you got 2 possibilities to get this right.
Little train.
That's right, the little train. The dinky engine became the inspiration for that story, The Little Engine That Could. The Little Engine That Could, I mean, didn't exist before the dinky engine. It's one of the great, you know, children's positive thinking. Oh, you know, the engine is a girl. And yeah, just started. And the guy engines, the big locomotives turned the job down. And they turned to this little small, look.
Do you want to know the origin of the word dinky?
Yeah, pardon?
Dainty.
Yes, or dainty. So I said it had 2 possibilities. I guess if you can write them both down, you know. What was Elsie's real name? Yes. Leela Carruth. Now, my next talk is going to be about, and I've been in contact with members of the Scott family that live out of state now, but it's going to be about why on earth the Scott family was so silent when there were so many things that they could have said that would have clarified the question, like if Leela Carruth's connection to French aristocracy had been publicized, and oh, okay, Opal got these fantasies, these stories from her aunt and uncle next door, or there are multiple things, but the family let themselves be kind of accused of being, you know, ignorant, redneck, abusive, and they weren't like that at all. But there were some real reasons why they stayed silent, and that I thought about doing that tonight, but I want to pull the last little bits of information together. But that will be a really important talk. Why the Scott family chose to stay silent when there was a lot of things that they could have said in their favor. Oh, see, that's what happens when I help answer these things. Okay, what was at least? Oh, what was, oh, and what does Merle mean? Right, it's actually Merlin in the French. But, and when I got an email from that woman, from her son, validating that Opal Whiteley had named him, that was really something. Because Opal's real clear that she pulls out a name out of one of the books she had. What was Elise Ravenel Duane's religion of birth? Yeah, Huguenot. Yeah, and if you just look up Huguenot in Wikipedia, or they'll take you to the French Wars of Religion and the purges that went on for centuries by multiple Bourbon Orleans kings and the church against the Protestants. Yeah, that was a very, very big deal. And okay, who was the publisher of the Atlantic Monthly? Yes, Ellery Sedgwick. And he wrote a really good autobiography. Part of it talks about Opal. It was published in the 30s or early 40s, The Happy Profession, and he's still bewildered. He doesn't know what he did to drive Opal away. But as I've shown tonight, he didn't do anything to drive Opal away. She was manipulated by this woman who convinced her that the Atlantic Monthly was selling more copies of her book than they were telling her, that they had sold the movie rights, and that they had the absolute proof of her identity all locked up. So they go that bizarre, break into the office or go into the office when he's not there on the weekend. But Ellery Sedgwick apparently never finds that out. And why couldn't Opal go to the Boston holiday parties for the young people?
Maybe she was illegitimate.
Yeah, illegitimate. And that, I think, the Opal Whiteley I've come to know, put so much effort into. She got a long way. Whether she was an orphan or not, that got her. People admired her hard work ethic. They admired her faith, and suddenly here in Boston, that was, instead of a plus for her, like it had been in the West, being an orphan child, rising up. That's a plus in the West, but in Boston, when they're coming to actually talk about, marriage in the Blue Bloods, no, everything is built on legitimate heirship. And in Europe, one time I asked a woman at the University of London, well, if we could prove that Opal really was Prince Henri d'Orléans' daughter, how would that change the British view of her? And they said none whatsoever, because illegitimate royalty are all over up here, and it's just a code among the aristocrats. They do not acknowledge them. So, but everything in royalty is built on legitimate marriage. Yeah, I'm glad we're not super royals. Oh, and finally, how did the fairies tell me that she wrote her diary in childhood?
All your research.
Well, actually, yeah, that's true. I did research, but first they came and told me, and then I researched, make sure what they were saying was true. It was.
Oh, probably the blackbirds or the chipmunks told them.
I'm sorry?
No, I just made up an answer. The blackbirds or the chipmunks told them.
Chickadees, yeah, chickadees that are not in Europe. Boy, the great things you can do with the internet now in research, like find when birds were in a certain place, and these little diary entries like that. But I leave the door. Opal Whiteley has surprised me numerous times. I leave the door open for. She always said that she was put with the Whiteleys, adopted by them because she looked like them. And yes, if you know the way they used to do adoptions and orphan trains, where they would have a train full of kids and they pull up in some godforsaken place out west, put all the kids off the train, and have somebody, families would just go along and, okay, we're looking for a girl with red hair. You'd fit in just fine over here. You know, here's somebody with olive skin. You'd fit, that's the way they did it. And so her story, yeah, until I see a DNA test, and I've never actually contacted Britain or anything about a DNA test because, well, one, you know, they dig her up, they do a DNA test, and it comes back negative. It hurts our tourism. Two, she has got a grave we would all love to die for. She is in Highgate Cemetery. They filmed all the Dracula movies in Highgate. But it's the cemetery for only aristocrats. Karl Marx is in there, Edmund Spencer, high-level writers and big people are there, but not ordinary folk like us, and not, you know, people who believe. No, in Europe, they did believe her story. And mainly probably because Prince Andre slept around a lot, might have been a lot of kids, but, you know, and also it's a tribute to, she just put her foot down and said, I am Francois Urban D'Orleans, and that is the way it's going to be. And that's all, yep. And
So what's the answer to the last question?
the answer to the last question, it's because if you take the number of times that fairies are mentioned in her diary, only 29 times in about 70,000 words. In the fairyland around us, 400, yeah, 400.
The Peter Pan connection, the Peter Pan connection.
Peter Pan was the bridge. After Peter Pan became so successful, fairies and the interest in fairies just really goes up. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle devotes part of his life to researching if fairies were real. It's something that everybody would like to believe in. Like, I'd like to believe in Bigfoot. Is Bigfoot really out there? Well, maybe not, but I really would like it if Bigfoot was out there. Yes. Any other questions? I thank y'all all so much, and I appreciate the accent fiddle again. And
Wait, we're not done with you.
oh,
Over here.
thank you, man. You came to just right time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve. So, I hope you all marked it honestly and counted up how many you got right. So, out of the 9 questions, who got all 9 correct?
It was 9?
Yes. Yeah. Or 8?
No,
I
it's,
guess I'm combined.
there's
But
9.
there's like, they're 9. Yeah. I guess there's
9
2.
question marks, 8 lines.
Frankly, we should disqualify Alice Griffin since she knows so much.
Yeah,
Oh, good. You got one more there.
All right, so out of the 9, who got all 9 correct? Anyone? What about 8? All 8 correct. Alice! You won.
I don't expect that.
Yeah, well, you got $15 to the Axel Fiddle. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Okay, what about 7? Oh.
3, 4.
Wait, 4 people?
Karen, Jennifer, and somebody else.
We all have to have beer together.
Yes.
I feel
Okay,
bad about
well,
having
two gift
6.
cards.
Give it to her. No. She's been working today.
Well, I think you were working too. You were at council.
I mean, she's been working for you here today.
Well, yeah. You, sir, have you been working today? We got 2 gift cards and three people. Okay, who's been working the hardest? Who's been doing the most valuable work?
Pick a number. Pick a number.
A bonus?
Or just pick a number between 1 and 20.
Thank you, man. You're a great city planner. Yeah.
Pick a number between. Oh, okay, I'm thinking the number between 1 and 11.
1 and 20.
1 and 20?
Now you know the number.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, you found your number?
yes.
Okay.
Do we hold up our fingers?
Yes.
What do we got?
What is your number?
14.
14.
14.
1 and 11. What did you get? 14 something.
It was 1 and 20.
I guess you guys two are the closest to 14. So.
I'm the closest to 14. Okay, now we go for a big round.
Yes,
Thank
and
you all for participating.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for participating in our trivia. Let's see. We also have the 50-50 raffle. Are there anyone last minute that wants to buy tickets? It is 3 tickets for $1 or 20 tickets for $5. And so, you know, the more tickets you get, the higher chances are.
Yes.
Okay, so get your tickets out. I will go get
Not
the
necessarily.
tickets.
all right, while she's doing that, I'm gonna talk about, we've got other history pubs coming up, one a month. I'm not sure of the order, but we've got some really great topics coming up. We're gonna have a presentation on Eva Davenport and also a small book about her. And she is a prostitute who died in 1903, 1905, and really her death totally changed Cottage Grove. And it's the most amazing story. We don't really know today whether she died as a result of suicide or if she was murdered. It's a saddest but fascinating story. And then if you're into inspiration, we're going to have a presentation on the Reverend Oily Olson, who put the oil derrick on Mount David and pulled out $250,000 in 1923 in Cottage Grove, all on the idea that God had told him there was oil under Mount David.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay, thank you. Okay, so out of our 50-50 raffle, we made $90 tonight. So thank you. So whoever gets chosen will get $45. Do you want to pick it?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, you have to not look. That's like moving up around. Okay. No. Why are you blinking? Oh, it fall out. Okay. All right. You choose one.
Oh, I think I've got 3 stuck together. Okay.
Okay. Early. Okay, so the number is 906937. Anyone got that number? 906937.
No.
Oh, shucks. I was gonna say, we got like so much tickets.
Wait, what was that number?
906937.
The last 3 digits matter.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
okay. All right, next one. Mix up the pot.
Okay. I'll pick out a winner this
Fake
time.
news.
All right, picking out a winner. All right. 768341.
768341.
Some people left, so maybe it's theirs.
It's
All
wrong.
right, another one.
It's rigged.
It's all rigged.
768-301.
It was 768341.
I think we might have it. See if this is it.
Oh, you're the winner! Congratulations!
You want to put it back into the pub?
Back into History Club?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Thank you, that's,
Yeah, thank you
sir.
so much. That's
Really
so
appreciate
nice.
Okay, who will step up and follow now?
Well, that is all for tonight. We would love you to join us next month, the first Tuesday of the month, exactly right here at 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Next month is August 2nd, I think, and it will be on the Bohemia Mining Days. And you can join us at the Bohemia Mining Days Festival in next weekend.
If anybody wants information on how to get an ore cart in on the race, I've got it.
Yes,
Yeah, there's information on the ore cart for the A&D race.
yeah, and that's,
We ought to put one together, Don.
They've worked really hard to keep Bohemia Mining Days going. You know, we couldn't do the rides, I think I heard, because putting together rides is kind of a skill, and it's really hard to find people with those kind of skills. You don't want to, just somebody that says that they can twist a nut and bolt and put it together in Ferris wheel. But yeah, they've been working hard. I'm hoping for a really good Bohemia Mining Days.
All right.
And thank y'all again so much for coming. Yeah, get home safely.